What in the hell is this supposed to be, old-timer? The words cut through the climate-controlled air of the briefing room like a blade. Major Jennings stood there, flight suit zipped to perfection, hands on his hips, staring down at an old man who was carefully polishing a dented coffee urn. The Major's eyes blazed with the kind of authority that came from a fresh promotion and an ego to match. Around them, Creech Air Force Base hummed with the power of modern warfare. Massive screens glowed with drone feeds from 3 continents. The AK-9000 Tactical Barista, a $7,000 marvel of engineering, sat gleaming against the wall, ready to produce 300 unique coffee beverages. But this old man, this relic in a gray maintenance uniform, was ignoring all of it. Jennings gestured dismissively at the shining espresso machine. "We don't do things the old-fashioned way here, Grandpa. Your job is to stack cups. That's it." His eyes fell on something pinned inside the old man's jacket, a faded sky blue ribbon with 5 tiny white stars. He smirked, reached out with 2 fingers, and flicked it with casual contempt. "What's this, Pops? Did you win the pie-eating contest at the county fair?" The old man's weathered hand moved to shield the ribbon. His pale blue eyes, the color of a winter sky, held something ancient and unreadable. For just a moment, the air seemed to change. Something dangerous flickered beneath that calm surface. And in the corner of the room, a young airman pulled out his phone and began to type. Military ribbon, light blue, 5 white stars. What he found would change everything. Creech Air Force Base sits in the Nevada desert, 50 miles northwest of Las Vegas. It is not the kind of place you see on recruitment posters. There are no gleaming fighter jets screaming across the sky, no Top Gun theatrics. Creech is quieter, more sinister. This is where America fights its modern wars. Behind reinforced concrete walls and encrypted satellite links, young airmen in ergonomic chairs pilot Reaper drones over villages 8,000 miles away. They fire Hellfire missiles before their lunch break, then drive home to their families in suburban Henderson. It is warfare reimagined, sanitized, and terrifyingly efficient. In this world of pixels and processors, Silas Croft was an anomaly. He was 78 years old, though he moved like a man 20 years younger. His hands were gnarled and webbed with fine silvery scars, the kind that come from a lifetime of hard use. He wore a simple gray maintenance uniform, the fabric worn thin at the elbows and knees. His job, officially, was facility support. He emptied trash bins, stocked coffee supplies, and kept the briefing rooms presentable. He was invisible. A ghost moving through the halls of a machine that had no memory of men like him. But if you looked closely, if you really paid attention, you would notice small things. You would see the way he moved through doorways, always checking corners, never standing directly in front of windows. You would notice that his hands, despite their age, were steady as iron when he poured coffee or wiped down counters. You would see the small patch of wildflowers he tended near the enlisted barracks, a tiny spot of color in a world of concrete and camouflage. And if you were Airman First Class Daniel Miller, a 20-year-old communications technician from Ohio, you would notice the quiet dignity in everything the old man did. Miller had been at Creech for 6 months. He had grown up hearing his grandfather's stories about Vietnam, about the men who came home broken and forgotten. There was something about Silas that reminded him of those stories. The old man never complained, never asked for anything. He just did his work with a precision and care that seemed almost sacred. Miller had seen him spend his entire lunch break fixing a loose hinge on a storage locker, not because anyone asked, but because it needed to be done right. On this particular morning, Miller was setting up encrypted video feeds for a high-level briefing. General Marcus Thompson, a 4-star from Ramstein Air Base in Germany, was scheduled to address the drone command staff about future operations. The room had to be perfect. Every detail mattered. And that is when Major Christopher Jennings walked in, full of noise and ego, ready to make sure everyone knew he was in charge. The touch was light, almost playful, just 2 fingers flicking a faded ribbon. But for Silas, it was a detonation. The briefing room dissolved. The hum of air conditioning became the roar of helicopter blades. The smell of industrial cleaner became cordite and blood and wet jungle earth. The floor beneath his feet turned to sucking mud. And suddenly, he was not 78 years old anymore. He was 22, and he was dying. A Shao Valley, 1968. The name alone could make grown men weep. It was a killing ground, a stretch of mountains and jungle along the Laotian border where the North Vietnamese army had built a fortress. American forces had tried to take it for years, losing thousands. Silas had been there as a Navy corpsman attached to a Marine reconnaissance unit. They called themselves the Ghost Walkers. They went where others would not, deep behind enemy lines, gathering intelligence and calling in airstrikes. On the morning of April 7th, everything went wrong. Their position was compromised. A battalion-sized force, maybe 600 men, surrounded them on three sides. The radio operator was dead in the first 30 seconds. The lieutenant took a round through the throat. One by one, the Ghost Walkers fell. Silas found himself dragging wounded men through a maze of shattered bamboo and mortar craters, trying to reach the landing zone 2 miles away. The medevac choppers were coming, but they could not land under fire. Someone had to hold the line. That someone was Silas. For 72 hours, he fought. He used captured AK-47s when his M16 ran dry. He set booby traps with C4 and tripwires made from parachute cord. He moved like smoke through the jungle, appearing and disappearing, making the enemy think they were facing a full platoon instead of one exhausted sailor. He killed men with his knife when ammunition ran out. He killed them with his hands when the knife broke. And when the last helicopter finally landed, when the last wounded Marine was loaded aboard, Silas collapsed. They found him 3 days later, delirious with fever and infection, his body a road map of wounds. The doctor said he should have died a dozen times over, but Silas Croft did not die easily. 6 months later, in a closed ceremony at the White House, President Lyndon Johnson pinned the Medal of Honor to his chest. There were no cameras, no press. The mission was classified. The names of the men he saved were blacked out in official reports. Silas was told to never speak of it. He was told that his sacrifice, like so many others, would remain a secret locked in the vaults of national security. He had kept that promise for 57 years. Now, standing in a briefing room in Nevada, with a pompous major smirking at him, the weight of those years pressed down like a physical force. His hand moved to cover the ribbon, protecting it the way he had once protected his brothers, and for the first time in decades, the mask of calm cracked. Airman Miller saw it all. He saw the major flick the ribbon like it was trash. He saw the old man flinch, a barely perceptible movement, but one that spoke of deep and terrible pain. And he saw the ribbon itself, sky blue with 5 white stars arranged in a specific pattern. Miller did not recognize it immediately, but something about its simplicity, its understated dignity, told him it was important. He pulled out his phone and typed quickly, "Military ribbon, light blue, 5 white stars." The result loaded instantly. His breath caught. His hands began to shake. Medal of Honor, established by Congress in 1861, the highest military decoration awarded by the United States government, presented by the President. Only 3,500 have ever been awarded in American history. Recipients are saluted first by all military personnel, regardless of rank. Federal law protects them from disrespect. Miller looked up. Major Jennings was now loudly explaining drone capabilities to 2 junior officers, gesturing at screens and speaking with the confidence of someone who had never seen real combat. Silas stood by the coffee station, perfectly still, his face once again an unreadable mask, but Miller could see the faint tremor in those scarred hands. A cold fury settled in Miller's chest. This was wrong. This was more than wrong. This was desecration. He scrolled through his contacts, his mind racing. The conference schedule listed General Thompson and his aide, Colonel Matthews. Miller knew this was insane. He was nobody, an airman first class, barely 6 months out of basic training. Calling a colonel directly could end his career before it started, but doing nothing was not an option. He slipped into the hallway and dialed. 2 rings. Colonel Matthews. "Sir, this is Airman Miller at Creech. I'm in the briefing room for General Thompson's conference." His voice was urgent, barely above a whisper. "Sir, you need to get the general down here right now." A pause. "Is there a threat, Airman?" "Yes, sir." "No, I mean, it's not a security threat. It's about the civilian serving coffee, sir. Please, just get him here. Tell him it's a matter of honor." Another long pause. Miller could hear breathing on the other end, could almost feel the colonel weighing his options. "Stay put, Airman." The line went dead. Less than 5 minutes later, sirens began to wail in the distance. They grew louder, closer, until the screech of tires on asphalt echoed right outside the building. The doors to the briefing room exploded open. General Marcus Thompson strode in like a force of nature. He was a mountain of a man, 6 feet 4 inches of solid authority. His chest was a billboard of ribbons and badges. 4 silver stars glinted on his collar. He was flanked by 2 grim-faced colonels, one of whom shot a quick glance at Miller. The room snapped to attention. Major Jennings, seeing his opportunity, stepped forward with his best command-ready smile. "General Thompson, an honor, sir. We weren't expecting you so soon, but we are fully prepared." The general's eyes passed over him as if he were invisible. They swept the room, past the junior officers, past the gleaming technology, and stopped. They landed on an old man in a janitor's uniform standing quietly by the coffee urns. The thunder on Thompson's face vanished. It was replaced by something no one had ever seen before: absolute stunned reverence. General Thompson crossed the room in 6 strides. He stopped 3 feet in front of Silas. His back went ramrod straight. His hand snapped up in the sharpest, most perfect salute anyone in that room had ever witnessed. It was not the salute of a superior to a subordinate. It was the salute of a man who understood what he was standing before. "Chief," Thompson's voice was thick with emotion. "Sir, it is an honor to see you again." The room erupted in silent shock. Major Jennings's jaw dropped. His face drained of all color. He looked from the 4-star general to the old janitor and back again, his mind utterly failing to process what he was seeing. Silas looked at the general holding that salute. His winter sky eyes were weary, infinitely sad. He gave a slow nod. Thompson dropped his hand but remained at attention. Then, slowly, he turned his head toward Major Jennings. The fury in his eyes was arctic. "Major," the general's voice was lethal and soft. "Do you have any idea who you were just speaking to?" Jennings stammered. "Sir, He's the janitorial staff." "The janitorial staff," Thompson repeated. He took a step forward. Jennings shrank back. "Let me educate you, Major, since your command training was clearly inadequate." He turned to address the entire room. "This is Master Chief Petty Officer Silas Croft, United States Navy, retired, founding member of SEAL Team 6. Before that, UDT. He was behind Operation Eagle Claw in Iran. He extracted assets the CIA had written off for dead. In intelligence circles, they called him the Whisperer. He led missions so classified that official reports simply stated objectives were achieved by unforeseen circumstances." The general pointed at Silas. "This man has more confirmed kills than any sniper in our history. He held off 200 insurgents for 2 days in Afghanistan, protecting intelligence that prevented a dirty bomb in London. He has been wounded 17 times, captured twice, escaped both times." Thompson's voice dropped to a hiss. "And that county fair prize you felt entitled to touch? That is the Medal of Honor. 1 of 3 he was awarded. 2 are so classified they don't officially exist. This one is public record, awarded for his actions in Ashau Valley in 1968. As a 22-year-old petty officer, he held off a battalion for 72 hours to evacuate his entire company. The last man he dragged onto that chopper was a young lieutenant who took a round to the chest." The general's voice cracked. "That lieutenant was my father." Silence. Total, absolute silence. Thompson turned his back on Jennings. "Colonel Matthews, escort the major out. He is relieved of command immediately. I want his resignation by 1700 hours. His career is over." "Yes, General." 2 colonels took Jennings by the arms and led him away. His shining career reduced to a walk of shame. Thompson turned back to Silas, his expression softening. "Chief, I am so sorry. We can arrange proper recognition. A position adjustment." Silas held up a hand. The 4-star general fell silent. The old man's gaze drifted to Airman Miller, still standing by the wall, terrified and awestruck. Silas gave him a small smile, a look of profound gratitude. Then he turned back to Thompson. His voice, when he spoke, was gentle, tired, filled with a grandfatherly wisdom. "He's just a boy, Marcus, full of noise and pride, the way we all were once. The uniform, the rank, the shiny tech. It makes men forget what's important, makes them think respect is something they can demand instead of earn." He walked to his old thermos and unscrewed the cap. The rich aroma of perfectly brewed coffee filled the air. The lesson is more important than the punishment. You break a man like that, you just make him bitter. But if you teach him, if you let him learn humility, you might save an officer. That's better service to this country than ending another career. Thompson stood speechless, humbled. Here was a man with every right to demand vengeance. Instead, he chose grace. Silas poured coffee into a simple ceramic mug. "It's still hot," he said simply. General Marcus Thompson, a man who commanded global power, reached out with trembling hands and accepted the humble offering from the scarred, weathered hands that had saved his father, shaped secret history, and now simply wanted to make sure the coffee was right. The legend of that day echoed through Creech for decades, a reminder that heroes are not defined by shine or rank, but by the quiet dignity of service. If this story moved you, share it so these lessons of humility and respect for those who served are never forgotten. Leave your thoughts in the comments below and subscribe to BR Veteran Stories for more powerful tales of courage and sacrifice.